state. A state of intrigue. A fugue state. The bluegrass state. Tonight, standing at a Kentucky crossroad under the light of the blue moon, we dive deeply into the state of the strangeness and take a look back at the things that have been and explore our visions of things that will be. After all, as every night owl knows, time is only an illusion.
Welcome to Kentucky.
The birthplace of Abraham Lincoln and built on the largest cave system in the known world. The home of Daniel Boone, Hunter S. Thompson, horse racing, and bourbon.
But when the hour grows late, the bluegrass state becomes the breeding ground for realms beyond those familiar to the human race. In the east, ghosts, spirits, and ethereal entities roam the hills and hollers.
In the north, Mothman beats his wings along the banks of the Ohio River.
To the west, small green creatures stalk farmhouses and disappear without a trace when shot.
While in the south, the energy of the Veiled Witch is palpable just over the border. Joining with us as we investigate just what goes wrong in the bluegrass night.
And ask the question, how many coincidences are too many? There's no need to check the clock.
There's no need to check the clock. Time is an illusion.
Time is an illusion.
And it's midnight.
It's midnight. In Kentucky.
In Kentucky.
In Kentucky. In Kentucky. Night owls of all times, places, spaces, and ages, the full moon has risen once again, and for midnight in Kentucky, I'm Ben.
I'm Jamie.
As always, if you enjoy the show, please leave us those good ratings and reviews. Those go a long, long way. Not only do those get us out to more listeners, but it just makes us happy. It lets us know how many people are listening and how you guys are enjoying the show. You can leave those on Apple Podcasts, Facebook, and now on Spotify. You can go straight to our Spotify. Right there under our name is the stars. We currently have 5 stars. We appreciate that so much. And we just appreciate you guys listening. So that helps us out a ton. Please, please, please leave us ratings and reviews. And if you enjoy the weirdness you're hearing on the show, check us out online at midnightinkentucky.com, the Midnight in Kentucky Facebook page, the Midnight in Kentucky Twitter, and Ransom Letter Publishing on YouTube. As I say every episode, we're still working on getting some new episodes up on there. But as we enter into the second phase of Midnight in Kentucky, I'm hoping to get all of those classic episodes up over the next few weeks, and the new episodes up as well. So, if you want more High Strangers from Midnight in Kentucky, check out Midnight in Kentucky Patreon at patreon.com/MidnightKentucky for all kinds of spin-off series from the original Midnight in Kentucky, as well as exclusive merch and content. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about the Patreon tonight as we go on. But before we get into that, before we get into what we're doing this evening in our weird Kentucky home, you may have noticed that Steven didn't exactly sound like Steven this evening, and that's because it's not. Our co-host this evening is someone whose voice you may have heard in passing if you followed the show long term, or you may have met if you came out to chill with us at Crypticon or any of our other convention appearances this past year. But before I give her a full introduction, I just want to assure those of you who are listening, who have become fans of Steven's work on the show, that he is doing well and sends his best, but has decided to take a step back from co-hosting for the foreseeable future for a variety of personal reasons. He has assured me he wants the show to continue, and that you may hear his voice again soon in an After Midnight episode over on the Patreon. But we want to wish him our best, send him all our love, and hope he can get back to the mic soon. Of course, this doesn't mean he's completely out of the Midnight in Kentucky crew here. He's still working over on the podcast streams and the website. So let him know how much you appreciate him. Send us some emails, however. But in his absence, we're opening up the format of MIK to include multiple co-hosts and solo shows. We will introduce our other new co-host as we go about our strange travels. But tonight, sitting with us under this full moon is someone who I discuss these things with on a daily basis, who I've been involved in multiple projects with over the years, including our marriage and the rearing of our children, Miss Jamie Lee Foster. Jamie, thank you so much for being here tonight and for co-hosting and for everything you've done for the show. You've done quite a bit over the years on the mic and behind the scenes. But before we get started, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you come from, what you do on the show, all of that.
Hey y'all, so I've had the pleasure of meeting and speaking with a few of you at some Crypticons and conventions. Normally you see my work in passing taking the form of Patreon mail, event coordinating, and some small snippets in just a few previous episodes. Just recently I've been creating a small line of MIK merch, and that's going to become available this year. But in the meantime, I guess I'll be gracing y'all with my presence right here as co-host on some of the newer episodes, and I can't wait to see where it goes.
That was awesome. So you've also, when we kind of announced this, and I kind of just made it up, you're also now the show manager. And I know that we have been working on setting up the Big Cartel, which has a lot of stuff that we kind of opened with at Crypticon. We put it out on the tables. We didn't really advertise it much before Crypticon, but it's all going on the Big Cartel. I know you talked a little bit about that already, but tell us about all the stuff that's going to be on the Big Cartel and all that stuff coming up.
Right now, it's more of the obvious items going up, just some different stickers that's been available for free if you make it to a table at an event. But there's also just a few different like sweatshirts, different cup items. We're looking into making, I'm hoping, some phone cases and some coolies and stuff like that in the future.
So I've kind of looked in and saw what you're doing with it, and I love it, and it's awesome, and I'm so excited for the full launch. But when do you think the full launch of the Big Cartel is available now? Can people go order stuff right now?
I'm wanting to probably give it another month or two, so by late spring, and have a full launch and have actual items more so than what we already do up.
Fucking A. So by spring, Big Cartel should be launched. People should be able to go to there. In addition to all the other places, which I totally didn't even announce this at the top of the show, but our TeePublic, our Patreon, our sticker club, all that, they can go to the Big Cartel and get Midnight Kentucky merch, right?
Yes.
And it's going to be more than Midnight Kentucky merch as well. It's going to be all of Ransom Letter Publishing. But of course, MIK is our flagship podcast. We kind of laid the groundwork for Midnight Kentucky over the past, what was it? You told me this morning. When did we start?
Was it 2, 3?
I feel like we've been
almost 3 years, I think.
And that was kind of volume 1 of Midnight in Kentucky, and this is kind of the second volume. So this episode may sound a little more like our After Midnight series over on the Patreon, when we just sit and bullshit and discuss weird stuff. But on tonight's episode, we're going to be discussing some ideas that we have in store for the upcoming year, and some special series that we're thinking about launching on the mainstream, some more details about our Patreon and what you guys can see over there, and talk a little bit about the ideas that we have in store for Volume 2 of Midnight in Kentucky and what we're going to be doing with the show going forward. In saying that, let's talk a little bit about the things that we're thinking about. We're doing some research into a pretty notorious true crime case here in Russell Springs. This is the murder of Tina Roberts just down the road here from where we're broadcasting right now. And Steve and I have talked about this a little bit on the show before. The reason we're telling you guys this is to see if you would be interested in hearing this on full scale, a full series on this. This is kind of a step away from what we've done thus far on Midnight Kentucky. We're kind of venturing into true crime territory. But also there's a lot of occult and paranormal stuff that have happened around this case, and conspiracy stuff, and it links up with Pennyroyal and Hellier in a lot of different ways. And there's been some recent stuff that have happened, right? I mean, and Jamie's done a lot of research into this already. Tell me some of the stuff that you figured out, that Stephen and I have been talking about this on the air for years and didn't even begin to touch the things that you discovered. So tell us a little bit about it.
I've only done some bare minimum research at the moment, because we're hoping this will launch maybe into the beginning of next year. From what I've gathered, Tina Roberts was actually a teenager in the time that this happened. And so far, there's actually a few different theories. Some folks, it is known tale around here that she was last seen at the local fair in the county and was later found murdered by a creek, like Ben said, just a little ways down the road here. But when we started to do the research, there's actually no legit evidence on file that she was ever at the county fair. So most people claim that that was the last spot, but in snippets of papers it reads that she was actually at the Key Twin Cinema, which is a big area for a few different missing persons around here. So it opened up a whole broad range of research.
It definitely kind of this story has been something that Jamie and I and Steven and honestly everybody that you're going to hear on the show pretty much have grown up hearing our entire lives. You even got warned off. Tell that story. So, well, first of all, this murder occurred in what? August 3rd of 88?
I think so. I don't know.
Which is pretty crazy because it's the day after Steven's birthday. So August of 88, fire season, a lot of different things going down there. And of course, if you're listening to Penny Royal season 2, or you're listening, or you've read up on Fae legends, fair and the term the fair have a lot of occult symbolism and a lot of energy tied to them. So that's an interesting snippet. But like Jamie said, we've kind of heard this legend our whole lives, or this story our whole lives, and it's kind of taken on mythological or legendary status in the county, in a sad, traumatic kind of way. And it was always told to us that she disappeared from the fair. We always heard that our whole lives. And it's interesting because when Jamie was doing research, she may have not even been at the fair. So, and there's a lot more, right? There's a lot more stuff that you discovered But tell the story, because when Jamie and I first got together and we started talking about this, because this has been a reoccurring thing, you all have heard about it on the show before in bits and pieces, and it's always been a part of life here in Russell County. And your mom and dad warned you away from the area. Tell that story.
Well, it's kind of not right on the area, probably a couple of miles down the road on into Casey County in a way. My aunt and, actually two of my mom's sisters, so both of my aunts had land out on Decatur, which is known as Torchridge, oddly enough. And the guy that is very well known in the case.
But there were several people involved. It wasn't just this guy. It was like him, his brothers, his cousins, almost like this whole family in a way. Yeah. Okay, go on, sorry.
But he's one of the main, and I don't want to say suspects because they're all suspects, but I want to say, sadly, this is how this guy got his local legend.
For sure.
We've got good local legends, bad local legends, but
also, don't you think a part of that is the fact that the guy that is most known for this, or the one that is the major suspect, is neurodivergent, to say the least. He has some type of, presumably some type of mental illness, right?
For sure.
And that stigma around that mental illness, I feel like, is part of the reason that he is the most known figure in it, even though, like we've talked about, he may have not even physically been involved in the murder, and it may have been all of these other people, right? So that's the guy you're talking about.
But he's the one that everybody is. I mean, if you even mention the name Tina Roberts, he's one of the only ones thrown in.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, growing up, like I said, we were on my aunt's property, and there were a lot of woods, and we would want to go to the swinging bridge. What kid wouldn't want to venture out into the woods? And we were always told, you're not allowed to go that deep in because so-and-so is always out there, and you have to be careful of it.
So-and-so being this guy, this main suspect in this case.
Yeah, for sure. But oddly enough, I've never seen the guy. I don't know if that was huge back then because, as we said, it happened in 88, so technically it was brand new. I mean, it was just like 4 years before I was born. So, growing up, being 8 or 9 years old, that's still a new case to everybody. So I think it was still something that everybody felt they had to warn the next person of.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, we've heard stories of this even today. I mean, one of my siblings lives close to where the murder actually took place, and her neighbors warn her not to get close to the guy's house, right? I mean,
yes.
This still happens. And kind of to your point, I mean, the whole thing was a stain on the small town psyche, right? Very much the Twin Peaks thing, the death of Laura Palmer. This quiet town is rocked by this murder of, this young girl who is possibly involved in all of this nefarious activity, which I say that, and how much could a 14-year-old girl be involved with if someone else isn't making her involved in it? But, there's very much this thing that it left this fucking hole here, right? Like it left this, it shook shit up for a while. And, as it goes, there have been several other murders since this one, and probably before. I'm sure we'll get into that as we dig. But several other murders that have been solved somewhat, or have been halfway solved, or have been left open that nobody knows what the fuck happened to them after this. And it's almost like this was the event that blew that hole into the place, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's not only murders. Like I said, the whole Key Village being tied into the possible place of her being missing, and the fair not even being a play into it. We've had people go missing there that's never been found. Murders happen there.
At Key Village, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean,
they're just different. It's almost in that actual, like it's inside of that area. If it's not, and I know you said like the fair and stuff is a ritual itself, but
even
like
the energy of that
there.
time. I mean, like even just talking about it on a physical level. Like the fair is a time when there's all kinds of people coming in that you don't know. There's all kinds of, and that was something that's been mentioned with all this before. They wanted, there's people that say of the Tina Roberts thing that these people that supposedly murdered her wanted it to seem like it was carnies. That's why they did it during the fair.
But that's the thing too. When you get in small towns like this, that's where you see the most ritualistic of using that time for a reason. Because when you venture out into the larger towns that have different people every day, there is no stigma. Or there is, and it's less seen, but even being less seen, the energy's not there. Like you could go to the state fair and it's all fun and games versus coming here and you don't even want your kid going through the gate by themselves.
That's fair. Okay, so talk about the reason why you don't want your kid going into the gate by themselves. As a mother whose children go to this fair every year, talk about some of the reasons that you wouldn't. You don't have to name names. Just talk about it a little bit. What are some of the things that have happened at the fair over the years? Because, I mean, even Dad, and you've heard him talk about this, he says every year the fair happens, something happens. Every year the fair happens, something happens.
And not necessarily inside the gates. Like, never really inside the gates. Don't get me wrong. When we were younger, we had to roam the carnival area ourselves because our parents were in the stands. They were up there. But when it came to actually going through everything on our own, there was, even being in that decade within her death, there was never any issue that we honestly came across as young kids going through the carnivore ourselves. But it's just the energy that everybody holds within the gates. So you've always got, especially the fights. Obviously, everybody relates it to this event or that event, but I don't think it's event correlated. It's just the way everybody feels when they get inside. So, yeah, for sure, I wouldn't want my kids going by themselves. And if they ever hear this, they may hate me, but I'll let them think they are at 16, 17, and I'll be right behind them walking through that gate doing whatever. But it's not that I don't necessarily trust them or even the people inside. It's like the energy that surrounds the area.
Right. You're right. I mean, it's very rare that something actually happens within the gates of the fair. It's something happens in Russell County during the fair, right?
Right.
You found out a lot more about this Tina Roberts case. Tell us the rest of it.
Other than basics, I've not really, like I said, I've not dug much yet since we've got time to dig. Some of the main suspects were actually located and held in connection with a place in Ohio.
And there were like 5 of them, right?
There were 5 total.
One of them being a woman, being the ex-wife of one of the suspects,
yes.
right? Which I thought was really interesting. You never hear about her.
Never. Or the other guy of one of the main suspects.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about him, too. I already forgot about him.
It was his stepbrother.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because they were all located and held in Ohio, or if they had connection down here and everything was hush-hush, but nothing is ever really said anymore when the story is told about anybody other than really the local legend.
Well,
there is another guy that comes up, one of the main suspects.
Yeah, and he got involved in some pretty major shit in the county later. I mean, but even then, he's still not brought up in her case as much anymore. No, you're right. He's brought up for the other thing. Everything we're talking about is very easily findable if you guys are interested in finding it. But yeah, he's not talked about at all in connection with her. It's more the guy,
Yeah.
Talk about it all being easily findable. You also found on her Find a Grave that article that snippets were taken from the Times Journal. And it said at the bottom, which was just a personal note, 5 local men were tried, but of course they got off free or something like that, right? And that's an interesting...
Yeah, from what I can tell, no one is still, or was, for the most part, really held. I don't know much about the main guy that's still about as far as the local legend thing goes, but the other, I think somehow they managed to hold him for at least a year, maybe a little over.
In connection with the murder.
In connection based on trial dates, but that was all. Once the trial happened, that was it. I hadn't put this together till just now, because like we said, one of the suspects was involved in a later thing in the county that killed an entire family. But it almost makes you wonder, because, well, we might as well go ahead and say it. He was involved in a drunk driving accident that killed a family here in the county. And it almost makes you wonder, if he was involved in the murder or if someone hired him to do the murder, if that didn't drive him, like we see a lot of times in paranormal instances, an instance with that, if that didn't drive him into that and it kind of drove him crazy. I don't know. I wonder that about a few of them, though.
That's fair, yeah.
Because, sure, they may have had something to begin with, but when something like that comes into your life, it's going to make it extreme.
Yeah, for sure.
So
like we said, if you guys are interested in hearing more on this story, we have been thinking about doing an entire series on it at some point, probably at the end of 2022. But in this state of strangeness, we wanted to give you guys a little preview and talk about what we found so far. And
right now, it's a jumbled mess.
As all these things start out to be. But also, as Jamie was talking about, and I hadn't really put that into the equation yet, even though we talked about it at the table the other day. Key Twin and that whole area has been involved in a lot of weirdness. And that's not to mention the UFOs that are constantly seen everywhere, all over the place over Russell County. And all the paranormal activity that, I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but it's very Twin Peaks, right?
We've got technically 2 shopping centers, but then we have a little food center as well where the Wendy's area is. And of all the places that these people could have went missing or have been abducted from, it's always been within that Key Twin that are mainly known. I'm not saying that they've not happened in other areas like other shopping centers that we have, but they're usually located right there within that area.
No, that's a good point. If you guys are interested, let us know. If you guys have any information on this case, let us know. We're interested in talking to anybody about it. Anybody that remembers hearing about it, anybody that might have any information on it, family members, anybody, hit us up on the email or on Facebook, wherever you can get in touch with us. As we said, that will probably be at the end of this year, maybe the beginning of 2023. Before all that, we are getting back to our normal weirdness. And we're going to be hitting you guys with some interviews this year, some different episodes about some Kentucky High Strangeness. There's a long list of people to interview, but me and Jamie are about to sit down with Elijah Henderson from the Cryptid Studies Institute, who we met a couple years ago at Crypticon.
On top of the interview, he mentioned maybe all of us getting together and going to Land Between the Lakes. So if we happen to do that within the year, we could even throw that in for everybody.
Oh, no, yeah, we'll definitely be doing a podcast if we go to Land Between the Lakes with Elijah. And hopefully maybe getting Barton Noonley involved in that and getting him on the show soon. I've used his research for a long, long time on the show. I'd love to speak with him, and Elijah are really good friends. And also saw the other day where Elijah is going to be in Seth Breedlove's latest documentary on Dogman.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, the American Werewolves.
Oh, yeah,
documentary.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know much about it. I just know you mentioned that he was going to do it, and it's kind of huge to get to do something like that.
No, that's really awesome, and I'm excited to see it. And I don't think we got to talk to him about it in the interview at all, because I don't think he was talking about it at the time, but we got a really good interview with him on all kinds of weirdness coming up. And then I'm sitting down with another co-host, John Swanson, who you guys have heard a lot on the show, to talk about Kentucky water monsters. That episode will probably be out after this one, and then we'll hit you guys with the Elijah Henderson episode. So there's a lot of different stuff coming up. Oh, and we're also talking to Kevin and Jessica from Beyond Sight. Yeah, they're really cool. Yeah. We bought some of their jewelry at the Pennyroyal 2 launch party.
For sure. Jessica makes some really cool stuff.
And Kevin is an awesome videographer. They're doing a series on caves in Kentucky that looks like it's going to be pretty crazy. And they did a little bit on the Daniel Boone National Forest, which we've talked about a lot on the show before, and all the weirdness that entails with that. So really excited to talk to them about all their projects and what all kinds of strangeness that they've seen over the course of their work, because they're weird like us, and they seem like they've seen that they've had a lot of encounters, and
they know their stuff.
But talking about Crypticon, this is the third time we went to Crypticon, and we usually do, well, and when I say usually, we did a one-time cryptid or a one-time convention encounters on Crypticon. This is the third year Jamie and I have went. Tell them a little bit about Crypticon, because I want to talk about it a little bit, even though we didn't get to do the huge show and the huge blowout with everything going on at the end of last year.
I think I procrastinated a lot. Sorry, that was me.
And I had a lot going on. Steven had a lot going on. We didn't get to talk about it.
But oddly enough, I was pretty hyped after we went to Crypticon and seen everybody's energy this time, because it was crazy.
No, it was awesome. We had custom T-shirts, stickers. Like we said at the top when we were talking about the big cartel, we had the glassware that Jamie's making. We had all kinds of stuff, and we talked to
cool people.
Yeah, we met all kinds of cool people. We met Jessica and Kevin up there. I sat on the podcast panel with all kinds of people from different podcasts.
You may need to put in the show notes a few that we purchased from.
Oh, no, yeah, definitely.
Kevin and Jessica, throw everybody in there. That way if they want to check them out.
Sat on the podcast panel with Michael Hanks and the guys from Sasquatch Tracks, the Furthest Reaches podcast, Jerry and Tracy Polly from Hillbilly Horror Stories, and we're talking about doing a lot of different shows with all of these podcasts. The guys from the Furthest Reaches podcast, all kinds of different podcasts. All of those guys are so amazing. I'm going to be reaching out to a couple of different, to all of those people for hopefully getting joint episodes or doing something with them as the year goes on. So be on the lookout for that as well.
Honestly, the podcast panel was amazing, seeing everybody, listening to everybody, giving all their information. But for that moment after, I feel like we stayed over 2 hours past the event closing talking to everybody.
For sure we did.
But it was just crazy hearing everybody's experiences and all the knowledge, because you catch it going through the event and stopping at tables and listening to everybody's giveaway, but in that area with all those podcasters in one spot who opened up just a little on the panel and then had all this free time after. It was phenomenal. I mean...
Yeah, no, it really was. And
the new ones. I mean, there were newer people there.
I mean, we're pretty new in relation to some of those people.
Like ones that are just starting up their podcast, wanting to come to Crypticon next year.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Even listening and meeting to those people after the
panel.
panel.
Like the people that were just walking around and chilling.
Yeah, and then they came and talked with us after the panel.
Yeah, no, that's the were the guys from Furthest Reaches, were they on the podcast panel?
No, they weren't actually. I met them. I forgot. I think you were seeing the teacher, the English teacher, Zach.
Somebody yeah.
From
Zach
Southwestern.
Bales. Yeah, we need to talk about him in just a second.
I think you were in his. I believe it was his little seminar, and they walked up and spoke with me, and they had a decent. We conversated for about 20 minutes about their podcast and their favorite cryptid and things like that.
Yeah, and they talked us up heavily on their breakdown, so we deeply appreciate that.
They're so good. They're sweet as can be.
They really were. And I've listened to a lot of their stuff as well, and their podcasts are really good. And I've talked to Josh a little bit, so hopefully we'll be getting a joint episode with them very, very soon. I'm excited about that. But you mentioned that Zach guy. Yeah, he's another one that I'm hoping to get on the show soon. He had a whole breakdown about the Green River Monster, which is in Adair County, which we were talking about just the other day, about how we were talking about Pennyroyal, of course, with the season 2 coming out, and about this whole area, and how nothing, there's plenty of stuff in Russell County, as we talked about just a little bit ago, but nobody really talks about things in Adair County. But as we done the Water Monsters episode and hearing Zach talk, there's actually quite a bit in Adair County, and the Giants thing. Yeah,
it's just never mentioned. Like, I don't know if anyone's just not interested. So if you want to start a podcast, go to Columbia. For real though, there's so much, and nobody ever really speaks of it.
Yeah.
It's just like Gone with the Wind, basically. You hear a sentence here and there, like the Giants being discovered,
which is in Barton Noonley's book. It's documented really well in that book, yeah.
And then the Green River Monster, now...
Which is what Zach talks about, and what his whole presentation at Crypticon was about.
Green River, while in Columbia, is big in Taylor County, so and maybe that's why.
Does it go through Bardstown?
Oh yeah, it's connected pretty well.
Which that's interesting, because there's that whole Bardstown podcast doing kind of what Pennyroyal.
Is huge, though.
But I mean, it's that whole podcast that did kind of what Nate's doing with Pennyroyal and what we're talking about doing with the whole Tina Roberts thing here. That did like that whole series about all the crazy shit in Bardstown.
But they've got the history.
And the Green River runs through that?
I don't know that it specifically runs, but it connects. I don't know for certain. I do remember that I read it does connect widely through the state, but I don't know for sure the route it takes. Obviously, I suck.
That's interesting. Well, I did a little bit of research in the Green River for the Water Monsters episode, because there's a lot of water monsters associated with Green River, oddly enough.
There is.
I think, does it connect to the Ohio River?
At some point, kind of, sort of. Not the Green River specifically, but...
So we're just riffing. I'm not going to look this shit up. But if anybody has any information on this, hit us up with it. This is interesting, especially if it flows through Bardstown, because Bardstown's known for its crazy shit as well.
But it's got a rich history with energies, not water.
That's true. Speaking of, that would be another interesting guest to get on here. The people who did the Bardstown podcast.
Gosh, that would be...
That'd be really cool. I
remember when we went to Bardstown for our ghost walk stuff, and granted, it was a paid tour thing, whatever, but you could feel it. We had experiences. We had phone recordings. It was crazy.
Where did you all go in Bardstown for ghost walk?
We actually went with a summer program through Lindsey Wilson College. So we kind of had to go with the group, do what the group wanted us to do. But we did the, is it the Tabernacle or something? Somebody out there mentions, they know. It's a tour that they offer. And they'll start you off showing you the outside, the door basically, of Jesse James's old room that he stayed in. Yeah. So there's a lot of energy in that area. But for the most part, right next door is the old prison there. And they have the stories to tell when it comes to the different homicides basically that happened within the jails. And then we actually got shown the backyard where they used to do their hangings in the old times. And across the street.
So apparently Bardstown was a pretty major town during like the
Westerns.
early, like the late 18th, early 19th century.
No,
right?
it was. They said that
I didn't
Jesse
know
James
that.
actually favored it, and he had his underground tunnels there.
Is that where his cousin lived? Z or what? I
that
think
was in
Z
Adair
was his
County.
wife, but
I don't know nothing about Jesse James. I just know
yeah.
it was you.
There's that badass Jesse James movie with Brad Pitt, and I think it talks about Bardstown in that movie. Like it's like 3 hours long, but
Maybe.
it's really good. But
'Cause
I
it
think
was
when he
big for
comes to
him.
visit his cousin, because he stayed here, right? Like he stayed and hid here for a while.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the saloon, whatever, the tabernacle, whatever it's called.
Yeah, the tavern.
Tavern.
Yeah, I
knew
thought
what I
that's
was gonna
what she was
say.
looking for. Okay.
Yeah. They actually, when you walk in, you could I don't know. I think you could step foot off the street without paying. If you go in the front door, the top left corner is his room. They'll tell you that there's bullet holes through there.
Right.
Because man, I don't know what happened. Was he dreaming or something? And they said that he actually shot through the wall.
Yeah.
And they have 2 or 3 bullet holes in there.
I mean, shit, though. It would be easy to accidentally discharge your gun in those times.
True.
I mean, even
but
just
isn't it crazy to think that here one of the most wanted felons was staying right next door to a hanging courtyard?
I mean,
And he got by.
isn't that, I mean,
Best place to hide, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's pretty cool. And it all links in. Like, there's so much shit like that. Like, that energy goes back. Like, Kentucky is a pretty fucking happening place for all of that for a long, 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 long time. But anyway, we were talking about Zach Bales and the Green River Monster and the Green River in Adair County. I hope to get him on the show sometime. But apparently he describes this thing as like this, he's in this tent. He sees this thing walking around his tent. And I'm butchering his fucking story right now. But
If you want facts, go to Zach. He is a teacher at Southwestern, and he has them.
yeah, I've got him on Facebook.
Yeah.
And he actually was not even, I don't even think he was there promoting the Green River Monster story. I think that was just his thing that he was talking about while he was there. But he's actually published the UFO Atlas, which is like this collection of all of these different UFO cases.
Oh, yeah, because he was really big on Roswell.
Yeah, he
and
was
how
talking about
somebody
Roswell.
had demolished the whole energetic nice thing that they had there. Something like
I can't remember the exact story, but yeah.
like a stone that they had. That
The
was,
memorial thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or they'd taken it, right? And just
Yeah, they had
dumped it
just-
somewhere or something.
Well, I don't know if they dumped it, but they had just claimed it as their own, I guess. Picked it up, and it was never replaced.
Yeah. But yeah, he had a lot of information about that. And but he kind of started out his presentation talking about this Green River Monster incident. And this was an incident that he had with his friend. Like he saw this all happen to him and his friend. And I'm pretty sure he's written a book about it. I need to do some more research into him. I wanted to talk to him after his seminar, but it was flooding out, and you know how those things are. Like it was crazy. But I told him I really enjoyed the thing and that I would be in touch. So I'm going to reach out to him, see if we can get him on the show. I'm sure we can. And but he describes this Green River Monster. Him and his friend are staying in their tent, and they hear this thing like walking around the edges of the tent, and then all of a sudden like it screams, and it's like this like earth-shaking scream. So I mean, it seems pretty crazy. And I like the way that he described it. He talked about it like maybe it was this like incarnation of like a nature spirit that had like, you know, been there to be like, get the fuck out. And I like that because you know how I am. I like that weird shit. But for real, like I like the way he talked about it. Like it seemed very much. And also,
But I mean, that's how you know his story's real.
oh yeah,
Like
yeah,
it was
yeah.
one of those that you didn't even have to question.
Yeah. But I mean, also, this guy was talking about opening up a paranormal spot in a museum in Somerset. So, you know, I'm going to try and get him on the show, talk to him. It was really cool. But there were a lot of other cool people that we met at Crypticon. Tons of people that come up and told us their stories. And I know that I haven't got to reach back out to you guys just yet. It's been a wild end to our 2022. No.
Oh my gosh.
It's been a wild end to our 2021. and
terribly
a wild introduction to 2022. But we're finally getting to sit down and record shows, and I think we're going to be pumping out shows left and right now that we're finally getting to sit down and do it. And I'm going to be reaching out to all of you all. Hopefully, we can schedule some time to tell your story, because I want to get those just to have them and to talk to you guys again and hear them again, because those stories were so impressive. We heard a story from a guy in upstate New York.
New Jersey.
What was his name?
Ian.
Yeah, Ian. And added him on Facebook, talked to him a little bit. Again, Ian, if you're listening, hoping to get with you soon and get your story.
We haven't forgot you.
We have not forgot you. I think about that story often.
we relate it to people often.
We do.
I think we've spoke of it like 15 times at least since
that
Crypticon.
One and the other major story that we heard. But Ian had a pretty profound encounter with a dog man at like a Boy Scout camp. Was that what it was?
I don't remember. I know it was in a rural place in New Jersey, and he was, what was it, like 11, 13?
Yeah.
Something.
He was pretty young.
Yeah.
He was pretty young. But really interesting case. One of those things where the entity appears and then disappears all at once. And we're always down to talk dogmen. And Ian chilled with us. Him and his brother chilled with us. We went and saw Geraldine Sutton's thing on the Hopkinsville Goblins, which was always amazing. We've talked to her on the show. You guys can go back and listen to her interview with her.
I bet her seminar was really good.
It was. It's always really good. I tell her every time that we hear it that I always get something new out of it. She does. It's always amazing. But went with Ian and his brother and listened to her and just chilled with this guy for a while. And as I got to know him, that made his story even more impressive, because he was just a quiet dude who,
just wanted somebody to tell.
Yeah, and there's so much of that. Like, that's such a big part of Crypticon and of conventions. And, that's something that John Tenney was talking about on that interview we were listening to him the other day, about how, I think it was him, it may have been someone else. No, it was on Micah Hanks the other day. I forget who the guest was, but he was talking about how there's so much at places like that, and in doing this, like that people want someone. They don't even necessarily want you to be like, this is the explanation, or, oh yeah, I've heard about this before. They really just want somebody to tell.
They want open ears. That's
yeah.
it. And
somebody that'll listen to them.
I don't know. I don't want to say comfortable, because I feel like telling those stories are never comforting. But they want somebody that doesn't judge and that they can be open with.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think that they want somebody to talk about with, because, these are spiritual experiences, right? In a major way, these are things that we can't explain. Like, we're encountering like this part of life that we don't have anything. And how often do you get to talk about that on a day? I know we talk about it like all the fucking time.
Conversation ever.
But like, how often do like everyday people talk about that shit? Like, people that, like, how often do you find somebody that you can be like, dude, I saw a dog man in the middle of the forest when I was 9 years old?
One lady, oh man, I didn't catch her name. And she was actually very quiet about talking, but she even said that the experience that she had with her husband and her daughter in the same car, and he never once mentioned the experience again. And she wasn't even able to talk about the experience with him.
I don't think we talked about that. I don't think you and I have even talked about that. Yeah,
because I asked you what year the Stanford UFO happened.
Okay, yeah.
And we did the research, because it was within that same year.
You did tell me. What was her story? What did she...
Well, coming from... See, I've waited so long past Crypticon. I don't know. So she was coming, I want to say to Nicholasville. From, I think, Nicholasville. Oh my gosh. Anyway, she was heading, I believe she said eastward, which...
If you're hearing this, get in touch with us. We'd like to hear the story again. Go ahead.
But it was on one of the main strips, and she said that coming up one of the larger hill areas, she seen something, and she had her husband stop. And it just so happened he stopped toward the top of the hill. Their girl was asleep in the back seat. She was actually there as well. She was like 5 or 6 at the time. And then her daughter was there. And believe it or not, her daughter was actually more intrigued by the story than the one who was in the back seat was. And the woman said that when she noticed it and they stopped, she didn't even get out of the car. She was worried. She did have the door open, but it was almost like she froze. So sitting there in the few minutes time span, this thing stops right in front of their faces as if it was focusing on the dip of the hill. And,
so what was this? What were they seeing? Was it a UFO?
She thinks, to her it's a UFO. We don't know what it is.
Did she describe it? Did she say what it was?
She didn't really say much about the description, but she did say that there was a light that shine onto the hillside.
Like a beam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it just shot down, and then after a few seconds' time, it shot back up, and they went on about their way. And that's when I was telling you, I almost wonder if their timing is based off of us not paying attention, because had she not noticed, she
or they
would
lure
have
us
drove
into
right
those.
into that. And I believe that whatever it was might have almost been expecting them to hit that light at that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And had she not had her husband stop the car, they almost would have definitely been there.
So this is the woman that you said she remembers all this. She talks about it,
yes,
but her husband has never
does
mentioned
not.
It.
It's not said.
So what about the kids? Do they know?
Well, the girl, she'll tell you she's very glad that she was asleep at the time. That's what she told me. She said had she not been asleep, she don't know that she could have survived.
Oh, because she was there with them. Yeah.
Like, not necessarily survive physically, obviously, but she thinks it would have actually deterred her mentally pretty bad, because she hears her mom talk about it. And she's like, no, Mom, I don't think I could handle that at that young age. And then her daughter, who was the granddaughter of the elderly man and the woman, is so involved. Like, she was the one that was kind of coaching her grandma along into telling me the story.
Right.
Like, she loves the idea of it. So I don't really know how everybody else outside of those 3 are doing, other than the husband, who doesn't want much said. But
was he there?
No.
Oh, okay.
I wish you would have been there. I actually think you were in Zach's seminar at the time.
Yeah.
I should have wrote everything down, because it was one of the craziest stories. And obviously you hear people seeing everything all the time. You sometimes hear the light being shown. It's not that it's not real when the story's told, but to know that story related within the same year of the Stanford,
which was crazy.
What is Stanford like?
76.
Yeah,
that was the year. Oh, Stanford does?
Like an hour from Nicholasville.
Oh, yeah.
So, it happened all within that time frame.
Yeah.
And it just makes it even more chilling, I guess. It's crazy.
No, that is pretty wild. There were so many stories like that. There was the other couple, and that's actually who I thought you were talking about when you started into that story. That story, Scott. Yeah. That story, though, that's a crazy story. But yeah, tell us about them. That was pretty intense.
Oh my gosh, you were in
Geraldine. Yeah.
And you were like, "Don't interrupt me," when I was texting and calling. I said, "No, come here. You got to see this," because here Scott and Katie were at the table, and they have this whole binder flipped open with picture proof.
Yeah.
Picture proof. They wrote their statements down, which is really good to do, especially if you think of it within the minute, because, well, like me now, I can't remember all details, but they've got stuff that they might not remember at this point, had they not have a piece of paper to read about it.
Right.
But he came up out of nowhere, like I wasn't even expecting anybody, and he said, "Here, I just want you to look at this." And then he started to tell me his experience with violins, his work. That's what he does.
He makes music, all kinds of different music instruments, right? It's not just violins, it's guitars and everything.
Yeah, but he had his violin. We had the little...
Yeah, he played the entire weekend. Yeah.
he gave everybody a show.
Yeah, he was an amazing musician in addition to these intense fucking paranormal encounters he had.
For sure.
And he was a very, like both of them were very humble people.
And sweet. It's not like they were expecting anything from
But they
it.
had kept very, very good records of their encounters. And
Katie, oddly enough, I don't want to mention anything personal, but her job, she told me, it lets her go around the county, and she said the energy that she had at other places within the county, even, oh my gosh, I forgot the county next door, this is terrible, but she said there is like not a lick of sound, and then the minute you cross the county line,
that's weird.
You hear everything.
That's weird. I don't remember her. I don't think she told me that. That's crazy. And I mean, that's a recurring thing. I mean, that happens in paranormal stuff all the time. That lack of sound is
it's like there's no birds. There's animals are afraid to bark, like different things like that.
There's no sound of insects.
She said there's 1 or 2 times on her job route.
Do you remember where they said they were from? Where were they from?
I don't. It's like a smaller place. It's not far outside of Georgetown, though.
Okay. Well, I mean, and Georgetown has a long lineage of dogmen and stuff like that, which is interesting in itself, and I hadn't really put that all together. But the fucking nature of the shit that's going on with them is like some intense stuff. I mean, like, their dog has been killed. They've shot this thing in the chest.
Well, they actually seen it basically take their dog.
Yeah.
If I remember right.
And I mean, Scott said, he's like, that's a traumatic experience in itself, and who do you talk about something like that with? I mean, do you go to a therapist and say,
I seen this big giant
that killed my dog and is terrorizing my family? I mean, so they had a really...
And that's what Katie said. Like, it's legit. You go out their front door and you're feeling watched.
Yeah.
You don't even have to walk 3 feet into the woods because you're feeling it right at their porch.
Right.
And she felt threatened, which is huge. Especially, I mean, in the home, she's safe, which is great. She's got that little spot of comfort, but to even not want to step out the front door because you're feeling threatened, on one side, they have had the Bigfoot encounters, and Scott will even tell you that he's safe. He enjoys that when that happens. But Katie, for the most part, has just experienced mostly the dogman.
Yeah.
And...
Yeah, and I mean, that's something that we talked a little bit about this with Elijah when we talked to him about, and it's something I always bring up with research of these things, because you and I started hearing about this at Crypticon in 2019, and then me and Steven heard about it, or 2018, and then me and Steven heard about it a shit ton in 2019. But the fact that the dogman and the Sasquatch are like these two opposing entities, almost like one is, a malevolent thing and then one is a benevolent thing. And that's how Scott says. I mean, he seems like the Sasquatch encounters are just chilling, and then the dogman was like some fucking vicious shit, as we've heard over and over and over.
I mean, they're yin to yang, but I almost wonder if they don't travel together.
Oh yeah. I mean, if it's interdimensional, which
Maybe.
We don't know shit about shit, but I mean, they're gonna come through that doorway together.
But this is the first time. I mean, obviously, sure. I feel like though this is one of the, not necessarily the first time, but the biggest instances where if one is seeing one, they're seeing the other.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, for the most part, kind of like Ian. He only saw the dogman.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're...
Kind of like Zach Seminar. He saw the dogman. I wonder...
Zach saw
or Bigfoot, I'm sorry.
But, I mean, there are a lot of... And we talk about this with Elijah, too. In Land Between the Lakes, there's a lot of Sasquatch and dogman encounters. Almost, and I think there's even some of, like, them fighting each other. But are they from the
same person?
I think there's some of them, like... And I think those are very rare, but...
Well, that's what I'm wondering, though, like...
But he talks about how they keep to like a separate place in Land Between the Lakes. Like the Sasquatch stays on like the east side, like and the dogman stays on
straight line. Yeah. Well, not necessarily a straight line,
but like a border,
an opposing
that they
line.
don't cross.
But that's what I'm wondering. Like if people maybe, which Ian was young. He seen his dog man. He obviously knew what he was seeing, but I wonder if he was in tune enough to feel energy to know if there was something out there keeping him safe, such as the Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Or if it was an instance where only the dog man was around.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that happens. I think, in a way, one has to be with the other. You've got to have the good to have the bad.
I mean, we hear about that all the time in spirituality and stuff.
And I believe that they're mistakenly not accounted for sometimes, but they're always there. You just never see or hear of something like Scott and Katie, who have instances where they may see both of them in 3 days' time.
I think they're coming more to light as we get more into weird shit. As the world kind of opens up its mind to these things, I think more people are willing to be like, I saw both of them. Whereas used to, I think it was looked down upon to be like, oh no, it gets weirder. There was a Sasquatch there too, just watching the whole thing. You know what I mean? Like, I think that was kind of like frowned upon to talk about, even in the paranormal community, because it was very much this thing of like, well, if you see more than one UFO, if you see more than one UFO, you're lying about it. Yeah. And even I thought that, but like, as I've got more into it, I've realized that if you see one UFO, really, that's the odd thing. Like if you see one, generally you see UFOs your whole fucking life. Or have dogman encounters, or have Sasquatch encounters.
Or maybe you've only seen one and you don't know that the rest is happening.
Or maybe you've only seen one and it just ripples through time, so it keeps happening. That's some wild out there shit.
Let's not go there tonight.
But back to Crypticon, I just want to say that as we've talked about, and as we've talked about discussing with all of these people, it's very much a community. It's very much a family. It's our favorite convention that we go to through the year. Creepy people entertainment, creepy people
judgment.
Management. Everybody is very open to everything. You can go from talking about Dogman to UFOs to interdimensional stuff to having someone almost break down in tears on you telling you their story and it's awesome. It's amazing. It's Creepy People Management that puts that on every year. They're amazing. Jennifer and Lee are always amazing, and all of them are incredible. And they're always so accommodating and very upfront, very, very cool. So
they're actually, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. They're throwing down a Bigfoot event in Oregon this year.
Yeah, Bigfoot on the beach.
So if anybody can make that out, we're booked at the time. We can't come to it. We thought it would be kind of cool. But if you're free,
like we're
go
badass.
for it. Well, we are.
But yeah, it does look really fucking cool, and we were going to try and make it, but Oregon's a long way from here. So, but just want to thank them for putting that on every year, and everybody in Crypticon
Benjamin, I'm just going to throw in this. Quit using that as an excuse, because we have some of the coolest people that come to Cryptidcon that are... I mean, we had Germany this year. We had Australia in 2018.
You're right.
Oregon's not that
far.
But
I mean, like, it does seem like every year that we go, like, isn't it like everybody? Yeah, and it's almost like you meet new, like it's like being at a concert in a lot of ways, because you're there for the same thing, and you're all there because you believe in this thing, or you've had experiences with this thing, or whatever. And it's just an amazing time, and we appreciate everybody involved with it, putting it on, being there.
Oh, I was just going to say the commonality.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And before we end the State of the Strangeness episode tonight, I just briefly want to talk about the Patreon. There's so much going on over there. I know that in the past year getting launched, and I know I've talked about this incessantly, and everybody's probably ready for me to shut up about it and just get some content out there. But last year when we started it, you know, it was a weird year for us, more weird than usual for us personally, and a hard year. We had a pretty rough 2021 personally, but things are good. Life is good, and we're excited to get back to the weirdness, and we've got so much happening on the Patreon. By the time you guys hear this, there'll be the January monthly Weird Report up, and that's got a lot of really interesting high strangeness from around the world and the bluegrass. There'll be the After Midnight with where we talk about some of the weird stuff that's been happening to us lately, personally. And then there will also be the first episode of Transmissions from the Abyss coming up, and a bonus episode, hopefully, about some historic dogmen and how a prominent saint in the Christian church may have been a dogman.
Oh, I'm very excited for that one. We may also have those packages to you already subscribed Patreons in the mail and hopefully in your hands by the time this episode gets uploaded.
Hopefully. You said that really professionally.
Well, I'm trying to make up for the non-professionalism of the post office at the moment.
Yeah, the post office has been working hard against us on getting those packages out. But
very much.
They are coming. Hopefully by the time you guys get those, the spring packages will be arriving. And the stickers and t-shirts for all the Night Owl's Nest Patreons will be going out as well.
And those may be handmade.
Yeah, we're hoping.
I'm testing some theories right now.
Tell them the thing about the big cartel.
What
and
about
how we may start filtering in some new stuff into different seasonal packages. And
non-seasonal packages. If I come up with something and I'm wanting to try it, we may actually give it to you Patreons first. No cost, just to see how you guys feel about it, in return for a review/suggestion to let us know if you think it's a good idea to throw up on that big cartel.
Absolutely. And we do a lot of stuff like that. Like, all these seasonal packages got sent out to all the patrons, not just the patrons on the highest tier who are getting t-shirts and stickers on the reg, but to everybody.
Yes. Got
sent to everybody. So, sign up for like the $3 tier and you may still get a shit ton of... Yeah. And I also want to send a shout out to Jennifer Gaypart, who was our very first patron and who has stuck with us through some crazy, crazy shit. And it's kind of like the head mother of the Night Owls now. So she has helped us so much with the Patreon and with all that stuff.
Yes, thank you. Believe it or not, you being one of the first Patreons kind of set the thing in motion. Like, once you subscribed, it seemed like people started subscribing left and right.
Yeah, for sure. So that means the world, and it means the world that all of you guys have stuck it out with us thus far. Sending out those packages hopefully this week, getting new content up on the Patreon. Everybody check those out. If you like what we're doing here, you're going to love the Patreon. But I think that about rounds out the State of the Strangeness episode for tonight.
If you made it this far, thank you for listening to my first one.
Jamie's first show of the season, the first show with all of the new co-hosts that we're coming up with. Again, we want to send a shout out to Steven, let him know how much we love him.
And miss him.
Great first show. Thank you so much, Jims.
Until the next moon rises, Night Owls, for Midnight in Kentucky, I'm Ben.
I'm Jamie.
Good night.
You've been listening to Midnight in Kentucky,
a Ransom Letter Publishing podcast.
Join us on Twitter and Facebook.
Or get in contact with your questions, comments, or stories of high strangeness
at midnightinkentuckypodcast@gmail.com.
Quit hiding your face behind the microphone.